2 games into the conference finals on both sides, and I want to focus on Dallas's big win in Minnesota as they take game 1 after trailing at halftime. So we start with a bunch of things that I want to get to. Kyrie. I didn't want passive Kyrie in the first half. I was actually a little surprised that he was getting so much credit for it, but that's what happens. We just play the results and be like, all right, he was so smart and tactical about everything. Well, he was just unstoppable in the first half of this game. It's exactly what I wanted from him, setting the tone. 24 points in the first half, 11 of 14 shooting. Ant was his primary defender, but I want to talk about 4 plays in particular that I think speak to a real fixable thing that Minnesota can get on here. We're going to talk about Ant's defense to Kyrie and what that meant for Ant offensively later in this game, because if you watched it, it was fairly alarming. But I tweeted this out about Jaden McDaniels, and it was that I don't think Jaden was ready for Kyrie's speed. It's not like Kyrie's new in the league, but after attacking Booker, attacking Murray, and, granted, guys get cross-matched and there's some switches from time to time, this was a little different in that there's just something going on in the league that I've noticed more and more, where if you're a really good defender, it's great to get out and challenge, but you can also be doing someone with great quickness or great ball handling skills, which Kyrie has maybe the best that we've ever seen. You're doing them a great favor by just getting right up into them. You think about when Steph Curry is beyond the 3-point line and he's in front of the bench. Okay, so he's not in the corner, he's not at the top, he's at the break. And Steph is bent over, he has the ball down low, the defender's right up on him, right? Like Jamie Foxx style, just right on it. And then Steph just kind of pirouettes away, gets the dribble, gets that kind of step before you put the ball down on the floor, and then he's gone. And you're you're actually doing the offensive player a favor because you're not cutting off any kind of angles by just staying 30 plus feet away. So I know that it's kind of well, wait a minute, you guys all love it when he's working Devin Booker and turning him 2 or 3 times, just trying to get the ball up the court. You love it when you see it against Jamal Murray. Yes, I do love those things, but with Jaden, I felt like he misjudged Kyrie's speed, or at least wasn't ready for it in game 1 4 different times. One was just a complete brain lapse where Jaden doesn't pay attention and Kyrie's too smart. Backdoor cuts Jaden because he can see exactly what it is, and because Kyrie's so quick, that cut is going to be more damaging from Kyrie than maybe another player that's baseline behind you. Play number 2, there was a left side layup where Kyrie went left hand the entire way, and Jaden just never really was able to get in front of him or deter his path, which is really crazy if you're thinking about Jaden's defense and his length and his own speed. He never was able to get to Kyrie, and Kyrie's got the ball, but as we know, there's some players that are faster with the ball than they maybe are in a 40-yard dash, and Kyrie's probably one of those guys too. Play number 3, 30 seconds left. He picks him up 3/4 court, and he goes right past him. And at that point, I think Jaden felt well, I have Rudy behind me. And then Kyrie finished against Rudy, which in itself was probably more impressive than any of the stuff that I'm talking about here. And Kyrie wasn't even fazed by it. And Rudy's just up there trying to guess right to contest the shot. Doesn't happen. Play number 4 picks up Kyrie full court with 5 seconds left, which makes no sense. Because it's Kyrie, another player, 5 seconds left, ball handler, who's likely the number 1 option to get the shot up at that point. Yeah, it makes more sense for Jaden to do the Jaden McDaniels things. But against Kyrie, I'm not sure that is. Guess what? Kyrie goes past him, questionable and 1, but a score that looked like it could have been 8 points or more at halftime in a matter of 30 seconds of Kyrie ends up being a 1-possession game. So when we looked at the half, let me give you the totals, actually, and then relate it back to the half, because Minnesota shot 49 threes last night. I knew they were shooting a lot of them, and then when I went back and looked at the box score, I was like, man, 49 seems high. They finished 18 to 49, so you could say 37%. That's not a big deal. They've never taken 40 in a regular season game this year. They took 40 in Game 6 against Denver, which I'm not sure was a real game. Denver was up 50 at one point. Or excuse me, Minnesota was up 50 in Game 6 to ascend to get Game 7 against Denver. Denver, you want to know why I don't think they had 23 points combined in the first and fourth quarter. Doesn't feel like a real game. So all season long, the Timberwolves averaged about 33 threes attempted per game in the regular season. That's 23rd in the NBA. But I wonder if the success that Minnesota had at the half, because they were 44% from three at the half, they were plus 27 points because Dallas, I think, was 2 of 15. They couldn't make any. I wonder if that pulled Minnesota into something game plan wise where maybe Dallas was like, look, we can't let Ant go off. So if the ball is with Cat, if the ball is with Rudy, if the ball is with McDaniels, and McDaniels was terrific offensively. I mean, that's a huge plus for Minnesota to get that kind of night out of him offensively, specifically in the first half. But the collection of the rest of the shooters like went real cold. And I don't know if it's a comfort thing with a team where it's like, hey, we like shooting all these threes a little bit easier, saving some energy on defense. And we're making enough to justify it when Dallas is like, great, keep doing this. And there was a bunch of that stuff throughout this game because it looked like Minnesota was making sure that they weren't going to give up any of the corner threes from Dallas. And we'll get to those numbers in a second here. The next part of this story is Ant was 6 of 16. But more alarming than going 6 of 16 is that he's 5 of 12 from three. We're like, hey, wait, that number's good. Not to me, it isn't. The shooting is great. The percentage is great. But that means that 12 of his 16 shots were outside the arc. You want me to make it worse? I can make it worse. That's 4 shots inside the paint, but there's only 2 of those shots at the rim. He was also 0-5 with 0 points in the third quarter. He took 2 free throws all game because he only had 2 shot attempts at the rim the entire game. He's averaging 6 free throw attempts per game in the playoffs. 2 is not going to get it done. So if we look at the percentage of shots at the rim in game one, it's only 15%, which again is low, but it's just the one game. But compare that with his rim attempt percentage based on the rest of his attempts throughout a game in the playoffs, it's 35%. Ant was either tired, was either in love with the three. And honestly, I think he was all of those things because in the fourth quarter, we did get the Reggie Miller alert. I don't know what Reggie Miller's batting average is on the Reggie Miller alert game that I like to play at home where he's like, oh, something's happening. But he was talking about Ant, and he's like, he's grimacing. And as someone who did one play-by-play game in his NBA history, I can tell you it's weird when I'm at home on TV going, why are they not noticing how hurt this guy is? Or why are they not noticing like Luka in my game, was it 3? I forget. The third quarter of game 2, maybe. I was like, how come they're not talking about this yet? You know the game. You've done it. We all do it. And yet when I think about when I did one game of play-by-play, and it's probably because I only had one under my belt where I was like, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff I wasn't noticing. I was just hoping to say the teams and names of the players right the entire time while giving out the score enough for the radio listener to not be upset with me. So Reggie Miller's on the Ant alert, and I'm like, great, somebody picked up on this because is he actually hurt? Because he seems to be somewhat not involved. He wasn't hurt. I guess he was just exhausted. I know there's a bit of a victory lap there where it's Ant. I don't really feel like he was calling out Kyrie when he gave out the defensive assignment in the post-game presser against Denver where he's like, yeah, I got Kyrie. Like, yeah, I mean, I think worse things have been said. Then that unfortunately leads, depending on where you are with Kyrie post-game content. I can't change the channel fast enough, but where Kyrie is just super into the sage wisdom role that he gets into, where he was like, I love that from him, but I was like, I don't really know. Was Kyrie motivated by all that, or were the perimeter defenders just kind of like, hey, this guy seems to go way faster and it's going to take us 2 hours and some film to adjust to how fast Kyrie is. And by the way, I should be fair about the sage old man thing with Kyrie, because I remember a guy came up to me at the beach. I'm sitting there reading a book. I think something about the withdrawal from, I don't know. I forget which region I was locked into at that point. And this guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, my buddies over there said you were some like big time podcaster. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, yeah, things are going all right. I'm at the beach, the middle of the day. And he was like, yeah, cool, man. So then I was like, all right, well, this guy came over here for a reason. I'm in a decent enough mood. I was like, what do you do? He's like, I go to USC. I was like, well, I think the important thing that I kind of figured out was that, getting people to actually like you can be a skill. I think, worrying about saving money in your 20s might drive you more crazy than just kind of being broke in your 30s. But I always wanted to pursue things that had like high ceiling value. I don't know if that's worth it. And then I think I get to like a third tidbit of advice. And the guy's like, yeah, man, I'm actually like doing pretty good. I'm selling like 20 something grand worth of stuff on eBay by like finding it on Amazon and then like marking it up. He's like, I made like 20 plus grand like each of the last couple of semesters. And I'm at the beach on a Wednesday too, man. So I didn't really come over here for advice. So I was like, wow, that guy just fucked me up pretty bad. So yeah, I can have a little Kyrie in me. Okay. So anyway, back to Ant. It was bad. It was bad because there were just too many possessions where you're like, what are you doing? You're just gonna stand there in the corner now, and Conley and Cat have to 2-man game Minnesota to a win here. And the thing is, they still almost pulled this off. But I think even the hardest of the hardcore Minnesota fans would be like, all right, do you want to run your offense through Cat to close? I mean, if that's what they're going to be doing, then they're not going to win this series. So for Ant to be that tired chasing Kyrie around after a bad shooting night in Game 7, you want to say, hey, one less day off? I don't know, dude, 22 years old. But these are the rules. So as we pivot this from Ant to Luka, where, look, I have Luka as the second best player in the world. I voted him second in MVP. I don't think there was much of a conversation of, hey, do I think I would want to take Ant over Luka, where all of a sudden, too, like Ant was the undisputed two-way king, which felt a little disrespectful of Giannis, despite the bag, the accessories. One guy may feel like he's buying something at, the Power Up airport shop where he's getting a carry-on there, and the bag for Edwards is a bit more of the Gucci Louis Vuitton line. Yeah, I mean, I got you there. But, I mean, this is what happens. With all of the praise, now enters in a lot of the doubt. I saw some wild shit today because people were like, well, look, I have no allegiance to this Cat guy. It seems like everybody really likes him. That's another bad playoff game, at least statistically. Although, look, he played defense. He made some great passes, some good rebounding, but not really going to do it. That's not going to be enough, buddy, because these are the rules, especially when you see Luka do what he did at the end of this game. 15 points in the fourth, manipulating every defender the way he needed to be manipulated, getting past the first perimeter guy, having Rudy in hell on those plays where I'm like, do I show? I think they blitzed it once late. It may have led to a wide open three, but Dallas wasn't hitting any threes last night. I think they only took 4 corner threes because Minnesota wanted to drop Rudy and they wanted to cover up the threes in the corners. So they took only 4 after averaging, I think, between like 11 and 13 attempts in the corner so far in the playoffs. And the problem is that, and this is why like Luka against Lou Dort, where you look at the overall numbers, you go, okay, so Luka was only 24 points per game in this, and the shooting numbers weren't better, but he was getting better. Like he definitely closed healthier, again, looks healthy in this game 1, as opposed to some of those moments early in the series against Oklahoma City. But you're like, maybe the credit to Lou Dort was that he was just able to impede some of this from time to time. Because as great as Jaden is and his length, you need to be stout against Luka. And Luka got right into what he wanted to get into whenever he wanted to. And I actually find it more surprising that he can't do this every single time, because my expectation is that he can. So it actually works all the way back around here, where it's like, man, this Luka Kyrie 1-2 punch. This is the scary part of Dallas, to go with the defense and everything else that Minnesota didn't seem to want to do on offense last night. So Minnesota will attack more. They'll probably take less threes. They'll probably speed themselves up to match the speed of Kyrie on some of the stuff in the drives. I don't know what you're going to – I always feel like that Luka thing can get really unsolvable certain nights. So, here we go. But look, if they're 2 evenly matched teams, which I think they are, I gave the edge to Minnesota. I think we've all learned the lesson that 2 teams that, it's not a wide, massive, like insurmountable gap, I don't believe, talent-wise between the two. The 1-2 punch for Dallas feels better than Ant, and then whoever number 2 is that night for Minnesota. But there's a depth thing. Like, it'd be crazy to think, is Dallas going to win this series because of their defense against the defense in Minnesota that can't solve what Dallas is doing? But here is the lesson that we have to remind ourselves every single time. 2 closely matched teams, 48 hours later, going to look completely different after the result of game 1.